Welcome to Keep What You Earn, a show for entrepreneurs and business owners who want to scale and build enterprise value without making costly mistakes. I'm your host, Shannon. I'm a CFO and CPA who left a career serving Fortune 50 companies in Wall Street to help business owners just like you make life-changing wealth with your business. These episodes are meant to be super tactical and actionable, but please remember, consult your own financial professional before you implement anything you learn in this podcast. Now, if you'd be interested in working with us to do so, check out the show notes for more information about our company, Keep What You Earn Co. All right, let's start the show. When it comes to business ownership, sometimes it feels like we have the most ridiculous job description because it includes a little bit of everything. The giant sampler platter, a poo-poo platter, if you will, of jobs. And the problem with that is when you don't have a clear idea of what your job is, everything's your job. Everything's your job and nothing's your job. So one of the things that I would characterize as the job description of a business owner, I call it my job description, is to be an allocator of resources. So it's my job to pour into the people, the things, the projects that need attention and pay attention to what's the closest to failing or what needs the most attention. Think about it as looking at the plants and deciding what to water, given limited water that you have. So when we talk about that, we're talking about, when I use water as an analogy, I'm saying capital, I'm saying energy, I'm saying team, and just resources that I have. But what I realize is there's this kind of binary where business owners either need capital in order to solve a problem, or they need information. Most often what you'll hear people tell you is that you either have to learn how to solve a problem or you have to go invest in someone who already knows how to solve that problem. Case in point, think like marketing and ads. You can either invest in learning that or you can hire someone who already knows it. Same thing with finance, right? You can, learn the basics of bookkeeping or you can hire a bookkeeper. So, and there's no right or wrong way. It's just a binary decision. The only wrong choice is really doing nothing about it and stagnation. But if you want to grow, then you're constantly playing this game of allocating resources in one way or the other. And you're either learning a new skill or you're investing in someone who has that skill most of the time. So I actually created this sort of quadrant framework that I wanted to walk through with you today because I actually see this as a great guide for where you are in your journey of resource allocation in your business. And I want you to think of it this way. There's a drawing here and there's two axes. This is a quadrant formula. So think like radical candor, think like, those quadrant frameworks where there's just four boxes with the intersection. So on one axis is less money or more money. One axis is less information, more information. So there's four potential combinations here. Number one is if you don't have a lot of information, but you do have a lot of money, then I say that you are data constrained and that you are really slow to grow. Why? Because you lack information. You have capital, but you lack the information on how to deploy it properly to grow your business. So you have capital and you might be misallocating money. You might be misdirected in how you're allocating. So if you're taking action, you might be misdirected. But if you're not taking action, you're slowing your growth because you're waiting around for someone to tell you what to do and you don't have the information that you need in order to make decisions. I think this is actually the prime type of person who needs a fractional CFO and the type of person who needs to engage a little bit with the information. And the information is usually something along the lines of your financial metrics, your KPIs, just the data that your business is telling you about what's going on. The next combination is when you have low information and low capital. I call this flying broke and blind. Broke and blind. So without information and without money, you're kind of in that startup zone typically of I have no idea what I'm doing and I don't have much money and I've got to get scrappy. So this is really the zone where you have to get scrappy. You have to find a coach. You have to find a mentor because you don't have a lot of information. You don't have a lot of money. So now you have to get scrappy to figure out who can I serve? What can I learn? You need to be a sponge and you need to have a massive amount of humility. Like I just had an episode with Austin, my client, and he was talking about how he would sweep the floors at his mentor's facility so he could just listen to the conversations happening. Like, that's where you got to be. until you have the capital to invest.
Hey there, are you on LinkedIn? I love connecting with listeners and other professionals and business owners on that platform. I gotta say, I'm really enjoying it. So if we're not already connected, make sure you send me a connection request after this episode.
The other one is when you have a low capital, but a lot of information, you're simply capital constrained. You have a complete idea of this is exactly what I would do with the money if I had it. This is exactly how I would allocate it if I had the money. I just don't have the money. So, regardless of the reason you don't have the money, whether it's sales, marketing, cash flow management, whatever, like you could cast an entire spectrum of blame on different things for why you don't have the capital. But if you don't have the capital, this is where you should be looking at your cash flow forecast. This is where you should, if you have the information, you need to be deploying a cash flow forecast in your business because you know what the data is telling you. You just don't have a lot of money. But this is where you have to tightly manage your money in order to deploy the resources you have intelligently because they are scarce. Okay. So scarce resources, but a lot of information means, hey, we just got to predict better. We just got to be able to forecast. And then finally, if you're one of the lucky few, I would call it, that have plenty of capital and a lot of information at your disposal, then I think that you are what I would call decision constrained, or you lack or need prioritization. So if you have an abundance of capital and an abundance of information, you might fall into a bit of analysis paralysis where you have so many choices in front of you, you don't know what to do. So you might just be overwhelmed by the fact that you have to make a decision on how to allocate your resources, how to solve a problem. And what this looks like is that standstill, that saying, okay, I could do option A, B, or C. All of them sound good, and you just can't pick one, or you have to just pick one. But the key here is knowing how to prioritize your capital accordingly. So there's a lot of things you could do with it, but knowing how to deploy it in what order is your key. And that's really also where a CFO comes in, but that's where we look at goal setting. That's where we look at your operations. That's where we look at your 1, 3, 5-year plan and say, okay, what are the most important and impactful things in your business that could help get you where you're going? So like I said, if you have capital or you don't, the only scenario where I would say a CFO can't help you is when you have less information and less capital. This is when you really want to be getting scrappy. You don't want to spend money on a CFO. You want to be spending money on a coach, a mentor, or spending your time on getting mentorship to shortcut as much as you can. On the other 3 quadrants, whether you're, slowed down by having less information or even slowed down by having more information for some of us, and you just lack, or if you just lack the capital to be able to move forward, all of these people can use a fractional CFO. And I was thinking about this because a lot of our clients are in one of these buckets where they're either constrained by their lack of prioritization, their lack of capital, in which case we're calling the banks and trying to get them extended lines of credit, or they're constrained by having no information, no data, plenty of money, but no data telling them where the money's going. And this is typically where I find a lot of people have problems when I talk to them about CFO services. So when you think about what's holding you back right now in your business, I want you to kind of see yourself in one of these areas where you can evaluate how much information am I getting out of my business? How much financial information am I really consuming? And how much capital do I really have to deploy to correct any issues in my business, to be ready for that rainy day, to be ready for some adverse thing to happen? What does that look like for you? And honestly, is there anything that you can seek out for help, whether that be the more information you get out of your bookkeeping, out of your financial reporting, or simply put, just help getting your cash flow back on track? So we help with all of those things. I hope that this helps you identify some of the areas where you might be more constrained in your business and maybe identify who might be able to help you unlock that constraint.
So profitability is one thing, but cash flow is what truly keeps your business running smoothly. It's not just about how much you make, it's about how much you can actually use to sustain and grow and maintain that cash in your control. When you book a power session with me, we can take a look at your payment cycles, your transaction timing, and your personal cash needs to make sure you're staying ahead of the curve. Managing cash flow is a constant process, but one of the most important pieces of the puzzle for a successful business. Find out more information about a power session with me to do your cash flow forecast in the show notes.